Hello there, people that are watching this video in Ms. Vo's class. My name is Andy Vo, and you're watching
Crash Course.
In this week's video, we will be talking about the post-classical period. The post-classical period takes place between 600 CE to 1450 CE. During this time, there were state reforms and increases in
Migration, trading, interaction.
These were caused by the decline of great empires such as Rome, which then fell in 476 CE by the Muslim caliphates that took over its land. The use of trade networks during this classical and post-classical resulted to the expansion of human interaction and change with transportation. Such an example was the Indian Ocean, which contributed to bringing together the countries like Europe, Africa, and East Asia. Mercantilism played part in the expansion and development of commercial networks, which served as a vessel for cultural, technological, and biological diffusion.
Mr. Vo!
Yes, me from the past.
What is mercantilism?
Well, me from the past is the economic theory that holds the prosperity of a nation depending on its supply of capital, and the global trade is unchangeable. Capital is held by the state and is increased through balance of trade. New technologies, government practices, and merchant activities that accompanied these developments were an improvement in transportation technologies and commercial practices, increased volume in trade, and the expansion in geographical range of existing / newly trade networks. The major players that rose to power were the Muslims and the Mongols. These nomadic and pastoral groups helped sustain the network in trade. Expansion of existing empires helped trans-Eurasian trade as new people were drawn into their conquerors' economies and trade networks because of the physical size of post-classical network compared to previous eras. The classical era trade networks that continued during the post-classical era were the Silk Road, Mediterranean Sea, Trans-Saharan, and Indian Ocean. These trade networks helped promote growth of powerful new trading cities during the post-classical era, which were Baghdad, Malacca, Venice, Timbuktu, Calicut, Swahili city-states, and Hangzhou. New technology enabled the growth of trade networks like sophisticated caravan organizations, usage of the compass, astrolabe, larger ship designs, and new forms of monetization like bills of exchange, credit checks, and banking houses. Commercial growth was also facilitated by state practices, trading organizations, and state-sponsored commercial infrastructures. Expansion of existing empires facilitated trans-Eurasian trade and communication as new peoples were drawn into their conquerors' economies. When this happened, the effects of migration caused environmental and linguistic effects. When you're a post-classical trader, you need a little something before you can conduct your business. Expansion and intensification of long-distance trade routes often depended on people's understanding of our particular regional environment and their subsequent technological adaptations. Vikings used longboats to travel in coastal and open waters as well as rivers and estuaries. Arabs and Berbers adapted camels to travel across Sahara Desert, and Central Asian pastoral groups used horses to travel in the steppes. The environmental effects of migration was the migration of agricultural Bantu peoples who facilitated transmission of iron technology in sub-Saharan Africa, and Polynesian peoples who cultivated transplanted foods and domesticated animals as they moved to new islands.
The linguistic effects that came during the post-classical period were the diffusion of language, which led to the recent emergence of new languages. Languages like Turkish, Arabic, and Swahili are often prime examples of this diffusion. The Turkish language originated in Central Asia during the 6th through 7th centuries, in which the Turks moved west or south from Central Asia into Anatolia and the Stans. The creation of the Arabic language was caused by the Muslim conquest during the 7th century, which also played a role of the Swahili language, which was a mix of Bantu from the north and Arabic from the east. Trade developed in the post-classical period due to the cross-cultural exchange, which intensified existing and new trade and communications. Trade routes like the Silk Road, Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, the Trans-Saharan, and the Sub-Saharan are all prime examples of this intensification. The Silk Road focused on trade of luxury items like silk and other items whose value ratio of weight was low. However, in the post-classical age, the Silk Road diffused important innovations in technology like paper making and gunpowder. The Silk Road also helped the spread of diseases, most deadly being the Black Plague, which killed about one-third of people in Europe. By 600 CE, the classical empires of China, Rome, and India all declined, which led to the rise of the Abbasid Caliphate. Under the Sharia law, it gave merchants protection across the Dar al-Islam, and Indians, Christians, and Jewish merchants alike took advantage of this protection. This allowed the decrease of risk with commerce. The boost of the Silk Road in this era was the rise of the Mongol Empire, who defeated the Abbasid Caliphate in 1258 CE, and the Pax Mongolica soon placed most of the Silk Road under one empire. Merchants were likely to experience safe travel, and the Mongol code of law, the Yasa, posed strict punishment to those disturbing trade. The Indian Ocean linked India, East Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, and China. Many of the traders from Arabia, Gujarat, and other coastal areas used latent sails, and their knowledge of monsoon winds helped them traverse through the ocean. Silk, salt, metals, and spice were a trading continuity, and the diffusion of beliefs like Hinduism and Buddhism spread to Southeast Asia. Islam played a significant role in the increase in the Indian Ocean. Civilization of Islam encouraged trade, and Muslim city-states along the Swahili coast of East Africa contributed enormously to trade. Gold, ivory, and exotic animals made their way from sub-Saharan and southern Africa to these cities, through which they entered the busy sea routes. On the Malay Peninsula in Southeast Asia, the Buddhist kingdom Srivijaya thrived on the spice trade that flowed through Malacca. Political development that increased Indian Ocean trade was the recovery and economic flourishing China. Chinese maritime during the Song dynasty exceeded Silk Road trade, and porcelain from China had been found as far away as the Swahili coast of Africa. This facilitated the introduction of new maritime technology like the compass and massive trading ships known as the junks, all coming from China. The Mediterranean network, like the Silk Road trade, declined when Rome weakened. However, the rapid spread of Islam across North Africa and the continuation of civilization in the Byzantine Empire would revive trade. Like all network in this era, Islam played a positive impact on trade. Along with the high regard with Islam holds merchants, all led to increases of commercial activity in which Islam was a large presence. The Mediterranean flowed precious gems and perfumes from India, a long-standing trade items of olive oil and glassware. Constantinople became an important trading hub since it connected both Western Europe and East Asia. Many routes of the Silk Road ended in the Black Sea, where goods would be loaded onto ships and carried through the Bosphorus into the Mediterranean. This provoked jealousy of the Venetian merchants, and in retaliation helped steer the Fourth Crusade toward Constantinople in order to gain a large share of this trade. Muslim trade networks changed in the post-classical era when Islam expanded from the Arabian Peninsula to multiple parts of Afro-Eurasia due to military expansion and activities of merchants and missionaries. The purpose of the military conquest was heavily supported by the Quran, stating that military action must be taken against non-Muslims. But when the forbidden months are past, then fight and slay the pagans wherever ye find them and seize them. Beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem. Quran 9:5. And fight those who believe not in Allah, nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and His Messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they are of the people of the book. Quran 9:29. During the conquest, the Arabs made little to no attempt to impose their faith on their new subjects. This attempt of self-conversion is called Sufism, which in this case is the total dedication to Allah and the abstinence from the pleasure, wealth, and prestige sought by men. The construction of mosques also played a role in the Muslim trade networks by allowing people to meet each other and discuss problems and try to find solutions to them through Allah. Post-classical trade affected the fusion of technology and science. Increased cross-cultural interactions also resulted in the diffusion of scientific and technological traditions. Inventions like the use of gunpowder spread along the Silk Road and as far as Europe, which allowed Europeans to build upon the idea. The biological effect of the post-classical trade allowed new foods and agricultural techniques, which were adopted in populated areas, such as bananas in Africa, new rice varieties in East Asia, or the spread of cotton, sugar, and citrus throughout Dar al-Islam and the Mediterranean basin. Diseases that spread through the trade networks include the Black Death, measles, and the bubonic plague, which followed the well-established paths of trade and military conquest.
In the post-classical period, many empires were formed, such as Islamic caliphates, the Mongol Khanates, the Byzantine Empire, Imperial China, and city-states in East Africa, such as the Swahili city-states, and those in West Africa, such as Ghana and Mali. In Afro-Eurasia, the formation of some empires were later developed, such as the Byzantine Empire from the fallen Roman Empire. They soon later adopted Christianity into their society and culture, which changed how they were to expand and unite nearby territories under their rule. Similarly, the introduction and expansion of the Islamic faith led to the Muslim world uniting under the Caliph, a religious ruler considered to be a successor of the Prophet Muhammad. The Mongols from Central Asia that went on military conquests to unite various Mongol tribes that were spread throughout Asia. They also used diplomacy to weaken anti-Mongol alliances. Imperial China consisted of the short-lived Sui dynasty, then moving on to the Tang and Song dynasties, where the former Sui dynasty reunited the regional small kingdoms through the use of Buddhism and the civil service exam to establish a person's legitimacy to rule, which allowed the Tang dynasty to form. The East African Swahili city-states did not unite but individually supported the formation of their state through a prosperous trade with the Persians, Indians, and Chinese. They then later converted to Islam to legitimize their rule over each individual city-state. They are devoted to the Islamic faith that they built mosques and Islamic schools throughout Mali. Post-classical states avoided the mistakes of the classical empire's collapse by combining a source of legitimacy and enforced new systems. Some newly enforced systems is a Confucian civil service examination system in the Tang dynasty, the tributary system in the Song dynasty, a bureaucracy and hereditary monarchy in the Umayyad dynasty, which was a part of the Islamic world, and in the Byzantine Empire, and feudalism in Western Europe. Many new forms of governance were present in the post-classical era. City-states attempted to preserve or revive former imperial structures or continue to develop. Nomadic pastoral groups created distinctive empires that encompassed both pastoral and agricultural societies, while promoting religious tolerance and integrating different institutions that benefit the various groups of the people in that empire. Governmental diffusion occurred through military conquests and the following of an empire's traditions. For example, Mongolian rule was spread through their raids and invasions into different territories in Asia. Some states synthesized local and borrowed traditions, such as Persian traditions that influenced Islamic states. Some states that developed in the Americas were the Aztecs. In Mesoamerica, the Mayans stuck to traditions of ritual bloodletting, monumental buildings of their leaders, and wars. On the other hand, the Aztecs originate from modern-day Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. They were able to expand their territory through invasions of nearby city-states and impose Aztec beliefs and religious ideals in their empire. These empires encouraged technological exchanges of medicine, paper-making, compass, paper, numbers, gunpowder, and the astrolabe along the Indian Ocean and the Silk Road. Cultural exchanges consisted of various religions, such as Islam, Christianity, and Buddhism in Eurasia.
Okay, so the innovations increased the activity of agriculture and industrial production. Agriculture was able to increase due to the technological innovations. For example, the Wari of South America had to dig up holes in order to get water and create an irrigation system. Crops were able to migrate due to Afro-Eurasia having demands on foreign luxury goods. Artisans and merchants expanded their production of both textile and porcelain by exporting those luxury items. Crops were able to migrate due to the Afro-Eurasia having demands on foreign luxury. Artisans and merchants expanded their production of both textile and porcelain by exporting those luxury items. Export of iron and steel then expanded in China. So, the post-classical urban areas declined due to invasions like the Viking invasion in Europe. Diseases like the bubonic plague that went through China, across Asia, and into Europe, and the lack of agriculture production because of the lower temperatures. Cities that see this decline include Alexandria, Athens, and the city of Rome. Some post-classical urban areas were able to grow due to the production increasing, the end of evasions, and the change of climate. Also, don't forget the safe transportation. Cities played a major role in their respective societies during the post-classical era by continuing the role as governmental, commercial centers, and religion. Social structures were developed, one being labor, caste, and class systems. Also, patriarchy continued during this time period. So, pre-existing labor systems continued through the post-classical era, which include free peasant agriculture, nomadic pastoralism, craft production, guild organization, and military obligations. New labor forms that were developed in the post-classical era include serfdom in both Europe and Japan, and elaboration of Mita system in the Inca Empire. So the diffusion of religions include Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Neo-Confucianism. So they continued to spread, and they led changes to the gender relations and family structures. So Buddhism was able to spread to Southeast Asia and Central Asia and China. Christianity spread through Europe. Islam was able to spread through the peninsula across North Africa into Central Asia and the Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you!